Welcome to this week's Harness Racing Alumni Show. I'm Freddie Hudson, and I'm here as always with Trade Martin and Bob Marks. This week's Harness Racing Alumni Show is sponsored by Winbak Farm Canada's newest staffing, Captain's Quarters. The son of Captain Treacherous is standing his first season with a stud fee of $5,000 Canadian. For more information or to book a breeding, call 905-838-2145 or email stallions@winbackfarm.com. Captain's Quarters. Also, the Meadowlands Racetrack. Visit playthemeadowlands.com. And Hunterton Farm, breeding champions year after year. Visit huntertonfarm.com.
The Harness Racing Alumni Show with your hosts, Freddie Hudson and Trade Martin.
Joining us today is former world champion driver, trainer, Donald Dancer. Donald, welcome to the Harness Racing Alumni Show.
Oh, thank you. Pleasure to be on here.
Okay. Donald, before we were talking a little bit, we're going to be talking about Roosevelt Raceway, but before we started the show, we were talking about Cowtown. Tell us about your beginnings at Cowtown.
Yeah, well, I was 14 years old, and I had my matinee and amateur license, and we're looking for someplace to get started. And I had a cheap little mare that my dad had got for $500, pacing mare, and we wanted to go somewhere, so they said Cowtown. So we go to Cowtown, and I'd never been there before. And we get there, and I mean, the place was where they have the rodeo, and now we're in the paddock area where the horses go, and now you're going to go down to the track. As you walk to the track, you're down a dirt road, sand road, I should say, sandy road, and you go down there, and you're through the high grass and this and that, and there's cow pies all over the place. And people that don't know what cow pies is, that's cow shit, and different piles as you head down to the track. So you're stepping around them, and then you get to the track, and then you get on there, and it's nothing but sand, and I mean, it is so dusty. I mean, really. And we're behind the starting gate, and there's a guy back of the car that's sitting in the back there. I think it was a pickup truck, actually, and he had two ropes, and he pulled them towards him to shut the wings of the car to start the race. And I'm like, oh, my God. And I finished second in both heats that day. We raced two heats. And
How many horses were in the race?
I think four or five.
Yeah, there was only three in the race I was in, but go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I think 4 or 5. And then after that, I mean, there was some wonderful people there. I mean, they promoted racing. You know, it was Marty Raven was his name, and Piggy Ray. And they were very, very enthusiastic about horse racing. And, it was a nice place, to get started. But I said to myself and to my father, I said, look, there's got to be somewhere else. Come on. And it was it's a long haul to get there, too.
Oh, a long trip, yeah.
Yeah, it was about 2 hours for us to get there. And so I said, there got to be somewhere. So I'm asking around, and then the people that I was talking to, they said, where you're located, the next one is, the best place is Johnson Park in New Brunswick.
All right.
So I said, okay. So then we made those arrangements to go over there, and it was like nothing against Cowtown, but I mean Johnson Park was beautiful. It was like you went to the Meadowlands compared to
That's true, yeah.
Harrington or somewhere.
That's true, yeah.
So we go there, trees and lakes, and it's just geese running around the place, and it was beautiful. So that's how that happened. But Johnson Park, I mean, Cowtown, I still ended up going there over the years to race in the Sire Stakes there. They'd have the fair Sire Stakes.
Right.
And Herve would be there. I would be there. And me and him, we'd both be racing for the title to win the dash title for the wins. It's about, winning races, getting the drives on those horses, and then getting to drive them in the finals, which the finals used to go for around 15 to 20,000. So, you had to get the points, so you don't want to lose the mount on the horses because at some other point you're going to drive them. And so you followed them around. And so it was no problem in going there. But it was just funny because, it's a different atmosphere when you're racing in those fairs.
Oh, it is. It is, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to move. I'm going to move us up to Roosevelt Raceway now. We have, like in this year, like we've lost some of our stars of the track. Carmine Abatello.
Yeah.
Russell Rash, we found out that he passed away, and most recently, Sonny Patterson. I know that you had been talking to Sonny Patterson before he passed away.
Yeah.
And what can you tell us about Sonny that other people don't know?
Well, he was a great horseman and a great friend, and I'm certainly going to miss him. And we had a lot of talks together, and we spent a lot of time together at the tracks. But our situation, I think, is a little different. It's similar to yours, where your dad was in the business,
right?
And he raced, and then you raced, and that's the same situation with him. But the interesting thing about him, I think, with me, was like his father raced against my father. Both of them were Hall of Famers, my dad and his. And then they had the Cardigan Bay and the Overtrick thing going on, where my dad, when he won with Cardigan Bay at Yonkers and set a track and world's record, he nosed out Overtrick by an eighth of an inch. It was almost a dead heat, just minus a dead heat. I mean, it was incredible. And my father told me, I got the tape of the race somewhere, but my father told me it was the greatest moment he had in racing. He said they showed it, like the horses, the photo was so tight that after the race, there was over 50,000 people at the track. And they kept circling and circling, and they would just have a spotlight on the horses, the two horses. So imagine this. So they keep circling and circling, waiting for the numbers to be posted. And then to have your number posted first, and then the crowd went crazy. And he says, I'll never forget that. He said that was incredible. So then here he is racing against his dad, and then the following week, Overtrick beat Cardigan Bay, my dad's horse, just like that too. Like the same margin, like an eighth of an inch. Wow. So it's incredible. It's an incredible thing that happened between the two horses and the two men. And, and then my dad was always friendly with him. So then when we're at the track, we become friendly together, him and I, and we go back to those kind of things, and it's just like that was our foundation, let's say, and then we go from there.
How fast did they go at that time? Don,
58.
How fast did 58? Oh, yeah.
58, yeah. That was world track record. He got a check for it. I think they gave him $500 for at that time in the 60s. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it was really fun.
Was Bob there? Bob, were you there? Bob? Was Bob there? Hey, Bob.
Oh, I watched. I saw both races.
Oh, you were there?
Phenomenal races. They were phenomenal races. And like Donnie says, the place was mobbed both times. But each finish was a whisker apart.
Right.
There's no way you could tell without the camera.
Yeah. Yeah, the closest to a dead heat. Because we had the photos, and they printed something out about it. Like the photos for each race. It was really interesting. It really was. So and that was, of course, Stanley trained that horse, but my dad drove him for him, and he was a great horse. The first horse to ever make $1 million. And that was Cardigan Bay. And then when he was done racing, he went back to New Zealand, went back home. So it was quite a story. But, getting back to Patterson and my dad, that's how that was, And, he was no question, he was a great horseman. So now here, me and Johnny, we're at Roosevelt together. And then another thing that crossed paths was I was driving, as I mentioned to you earlier, my Bill Forward. I was driving him as a three-year-old, and then as a 4-year-old, I drove him, and I believe he went into a 5. And I drove him for Lester Pullen was the trainer. And won a bunch of races with him, and he was very fast, but he couldn't carry his speed, until later on in life. And then next thing I know, I heard that he had cracked a bone. He chipped a bone. and he was supposedly retired for stud and going back to Maine. This was the story I heard, and he left Lester Pullen. He left Lester Pullen. So next thing I know, I'm on the track at Roosevelt, and I see this horse jogging, and it sure looks like him to me. So I said something to the groom. I said, who is that? Is that my bull forward? And they go, yeah. And I'm like, that's something. So who's got him? Johnny Patterson Jr. So now I go see Johnny. Yeah, so I see Johnny, and I said, what's up with this? And he says, yeah, he says he knew the owner from before. And he said the guy called up and offered him to take the horse to train. He said, would you take him and train him? And I said, well, the only thing, Johnny, I heard he cracked a bone, and he supposedly was done. You know, they were going to retire him. And he said, well, I don't know nothing about that, you know. so he was going to get it. He was going to look into it. And next thing I know, you know, now he's racing them. And he went on and kept on racing, and I guess they just injected his knees every once in a while with hyaluronic acid, and maybe it wasn't anywhere near as bad as they thought it was, or the x-rays, they read them wrong, who knows. But he always stayed
wasn't a coffin bone. It wasn't a coffin bone. They just laid him up for like 6 months, and then could have been,
it was just, it could have been, but it was supposedly a crack in the knee, like a crack bone in the knee. Yeah. And he kept right on racing and did real good with him and was in the Levy. So here we crossed paths with that, and we discussed that horse a number of times, you know, how he had him rigged up, because he was not an easy horse to drive. Okay, I'm telling you. He really wasn't. And he used to jump over things when he was younger. He would skip over top of things and then flatten back out if you were lucky and keep right on going, you know. And he ran off.
Shadow roll didn't help him, huh?
Yeah.
Shadow roll didn't help him?
Yeah, he had a shadow roll and a turnaround shadow roll and blind bridle. But he'd see wheel marks, you know, and any little thing on the track, you know. And as he got older, like I said, he got so much better. And he also got better about his speed and the class of horses he was in against. He could hold him better. But believe me, you earned your money when if you got any money with him, you earned it.
You know, hey, Donald, I remember at Roosevelt Raceway, and I go back, you know, I remember driving into the stable gate, and on the right side in Z Barn was your Uncle Stanley, and on the left side was your dad's barn, A Barn. And both barns were immaculate. I mean, I think that they used to give out awards. I think Stanley won the award for best barn every year when he was stabled there. And were you training at Roosevelt at that time?
Well, I came up to Roosevelt to train. I ended up moving up there to race in the early 80s, like 81, 82, I believe it was. That's when I came up there. Like, I raced around everywhere. I'd race there. Of course, my dad, like you say, was stabled there, and at Yonkers. As a kid, I'd go there with him. And then just a quick story about that. One time, he thought things weren't working quite well at the barn and how you learn things, and he said, something's going on here. He says, I got to see what's going on. And I says, yeah. He said, we're gonna stay overnight. He says to me, we're gonna stay overnight over there, and tomorrow morning we're gonna go to that barn real early, and find out what's going on over there. So that's what we did. Yep, that's what he said to me. So I'll never forget the things that he taught me, you know. So that was one of them. You go there and you find out what's really going on. And I did that later on in life myself and found out what was happening. It was at the Meadowlands, really, where I was having a little problem with some of my help. And so that was one of the things you learn. And you get a grab on what's happening. And then another one was we had an old guy working for us, and he said to my father, he says, look, he says, you better get them wheels on them trunks. And trunk, what are you talking about? Wheels on trunks. And so I said, what's that about? And he says, one of the owners was snooping around the day before, and the groom saw him, and he says, he's getting ready to make a move, Vern. You better get ready. And sure enough, the guy moved the horses. So there's things that I learned that happened to my dad that I'll never forget. You know, that if you're smart, you catch on to these things, and that's what happened there. Yeah. So, yeah, but Roosevelt was really nice. You know, it's sad that it's gone, as we're seeing so many things in the sport.
I'm also going to bring this up about your cousin Ronnie, who passed away recently also. But you went over to his office, and I guess I'm just going to say I forget the county that it was in, but next to an Italian restaurant. But you went into his office, and they were in the office and listening to the Harness Racing Alumni Show.
Yeah. He had an office in. He had two. One was in Ocean County, was in Jackson, New Jersey. And he had one there, County Line Road, I believe it was on. And I was in there one day. And then the other one he had was in New Egypt. He had it over there. He had an office there. So both times I've come in and seen him, you know. And there, yeah, you know.
But I got a kick out of that when you told me that they were listening to the Harness Racing Alumni Show.
Yeah, right. They listened to the show. Yeah, that's right.
And then he did come on the show before he passed away, and I really didn't realize how ill he was when he came on the show. Trade and Bob, I don't know if you know that he was ill when he came on the show.
No, I don't remember. No. How old was he when he died, Don?
I think he was in his early 70s, you know.
Oh, yeah, huh?
Yeah, I believe so, yeah. But he never really discussed it. He told me one day, and I was surprised. I didn't know that he told me a scare. That's all he said. I had a scare myself. And I said, really? He said, yeah. And he said, but everything worked out. Everything's okay. And after he told me that, I would say maybe it was a month later, he had passed. And I'm like, wow, man. Like, I couldn't believe it. I was shocked. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, man, here today, gone tomorrow. You're just very sad. You just don't know.
It is. It's true.
Mm-hmm. So we got to count our blessings each and every day. How lucky we are.
That's true. That's true.
Yep. Mm-hmm. The last thing I'm going to say, Donald, was when you first raced at Roosevelt, did you notice a difference from racing at other tracks?
Oh, yeah. When I came to Roosevelt in Yonkers, it was an amazing change. I started driving there when I was 19, and I come up there, and I was very fortunate to drive some horses for Stanley. He put me down on some of his, and I was prepared, but I'm still only 19 years old, you know. And the racing, how tight we would race, how close, and rubbing against each other's wheels and stuff like that, and real tight onto one another. And I never forget in one race with Benny Webster, I was coming up to take the lead, and he was keeping me out there, and I really wanted to get crossed over. I didn't want to get parked, so I kind of cut him a bit tight to cross over. And you put your wheel ahead of the other guy, and you kind of come in, and hope that he'll take back.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. And he took up and let me go. So now I got around him. And I went, oh, thank God. And then no sooner than I do that, now we're at the quarter pole. He came right out.
Yeah.
And he almost did the same thing to you. And he did the same to me and almost put me over the hub rail. I mean, cut me right off. I mean, I did it gently. He did it abruptly. And I'm like, my reaction was, wow, now that's some driving there, boy. You know what I mean? I was impressed.
Yeah.
I was impressed. You know, instead of being like some people would be intimidated by that or be scared, I was impressed. I was there like, God,
well, that's
damn,
like a screw you. That's a screw you move, you know. Screw you move. This is how you do it.
Yeah.
This is how you do it.
It wasn't like I'm going to get you back next week or later on tomorrow or whatever. He got me back right immediately. Now. Immediately. I'm like, damn. Yeah.
But who won the race? Who won the race, though, Don? Did you or him win the race?
It wasn't me. I could remember that. But yeah, the worst things I try to forget. But if I'd have won, I'd have remembered. I'd have remembered. No, I don't believe I won. But I'll never forget that, though. And that's something that stays with you. I mean, I'm 70 years old now. And I mean, it was like yesterday. I could tell you what happened there. It was amazing. Yeah, but what driving, though? But like I said, but everybody, that's why I believe there was less accidents, too, because everybody was watching. You know, you watch up ahead of you. You're watching the horses' heads and their ears, and you see if anything changes in the tempo of the race real quick, you know, and you're listening, you know, listening if anybody yells or something. I mean, you're in tune to the whole thing. You know, you're focused. And I think that's what's changed in the sport, you know, because I just got to believe that, you know, people just not on top of their game of these accidents that are occurring. I'm not saying some of them, you know, can't be avoided, which they probably can't be because if it happens in split seconds, you know.
Right.
But I believe some of them, there doesn't have to be 6 horses go down, you know, and in some of these wrecks. So, I mean, you know, some of this stuff could be avoided, but the way the bikes are and the way they got their handholds back so far, and there's no way that they can see. There's no way they have
no control. There's no control. There's not as much control as we used to have sitting up with the handholds in the proper place, you know. Yeah.
A lot of the guys don't even use the handholds in a race, like the one.
No, I noticed that too. Yeah, it's true.
Wally Hennessy had his hands in front of the handholds the whole race.
Yeah, that's the way most of them do, and then like they're not even scoring the horses down like you used to do. You used to parade them. You know, there was a post parade they called it, and you're behind each horse, and you go out on the track that way, and then you turn, and then you turn again and take a score if you chose to, and then you let the horse go a little bit, but they're just letting them roll. You know, and then it's the same thing when they come to the gate. They're letting them roll. And, you know, that's why their handholds are up a little higher, and then they drop them back down again, and then they're going 28, 27 quarters. I mean, like, I don't know. You know, it used to be we were trying to save the horse for the race, you know. That's the way it used to be.
Now just put the pedal to the metal. That's all.
Yeah, I had an old-timer one time. I was catch driving the horse for the first time. And I said to him, anything special? And he said, yeah. I said, anything you want me to do special in the race? He said, yeah. I said, what? He says, score them slow and race them fast. Where these guys score them fast and race them fast. You know, they try to. But I thought that was the funniest thing.
If we had some of the horses that we raced, if you tried to race them the way that they race these horses today, they'd fall down by the quarter pole. I mean,
well, they'd be tired out after the post-bury, after you scored them down. Yeah, and hard to manage. You know.
Well, with that, I'm going to close the show out. Donald, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. But once again, about Johnny, I mean, he'd be sorely missed. I mean, he really would be.
Absolutely.
I mean, he was a great horseman, a great driver, great set of hands on him. Never, you know, and unfortunately he had some accidents that I think hampered his career, you know, and as I talked to him later in life, as you asked me, he was suffering from different ailments. You know, he said that it was hard for him. He had some retiree horses that he was taking care of at his farm and wouldn't just, you know, discard them. He kept them and took care of them, which is a credit to him. Nice. Yeah, credit to him. And, you know, just a great guy. You know, he really was. And he'd help you out. He would do anything for you. Anybody I know, I never heard him turn anybody away. You know, he always tried to help people.
You know what, Donnie, before we go, tell everybody about the Herve story. Herve getting you the helicopter for you and John to go to Freehold to race those stake races. And that's a pretty cute story. Tell us that.
What about the helicopter?
Well, we had to go to Freehold, and and he was like worried about the traffic and this stuff. We had stake races to be in at Freehold, and I said, well, why don't we take a helicopter? And he says, oh, I don't know about that. I said, yeah. I said, come on. I said, we could take it right out of Westbury there. I said, let me make the arrangements. I'll make the arrangements. I told him. I'll let you know. So he goes, okay. So I make the arrangements. He meets me. We go to the heliport. We fly to Freehold. He said, well, where are we going to land? I said, we're going to land in the infield. Oh, okay. So now he don't like the publicity, and he don't like the limelight on him or spotlight, believe me.
Yeah.
So he's a bit, you know, I wouldn't say it's to himself type of person. You know, he don't want to put it out there. You know, he's not into the publicity. So So we land. So now we land in the infield, and we're walking across the track. So just imagine this. So now we're walking across the track, and you know where the little booth is there as you cross the track.
Yeah.
You know, they call out the horses and everything, right? So as we're walking there, he's kind of got his head down, and he like wants to disappear that people don't see him. And all of a sudden, somebody gets on a loudspeaker, Herve. He gets on the speaker and he goes, "Oh, I want to welcome Donald Dancer and Sonny for all the money, Patterson, to Freehold Raceway today. So I want to wish you both the best of luck to race here today at Freehold," and blah, blah, blah. And Johnny's going, "Why, that son of a bitch, look at that." he was like, he stepped it up. Like, he's walking faster. He's like, "We got to get out of here." And I just waved to Herve. "Yeah, thanks, Herve," you know. Oh, yeah, because Herve knew how he was. Herve knew he was.
He was funny. He was a funny guy. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And he knew that Johnny don't like the press. You know, he don't like the spotlight, you know. And here he's making a big fuss about him. And Johnny's like, "You believe that?" Yeah. Yeah, so that was a funny story with him, you know. But, no, he's a great guy. Yep, so, yeah, it's sad. I don't know. It was a surprise to me, but what can we do?
I'm sure he's going to be missed. This week's Harness Racing Alumni Show is sponsored by Winbak Farm Canada's newest stallion, Captain's Quarters. The son of Captain Treacherous is standing his first season with a stud fee of $5,000 Canadian. For more information or to book a breeding, call 905-838-2145. or email stallions@winbakfarm.com. Captain's Quarters. Also, the Meadowlands Racetrack. Visit playthemeadowlands.com. And Hunterton Farm, breeding champions year after year. Visit huntertonfarm.com. That's a wrap for this week's show. Thanks for listening, and please join us again next week.
The Harness Racing Alumni Show